24 hours have since passed, and we've had some time now to reflect upon last night's expected but equally disappointing draw against Manchester United. And today, I'm here to discuss the 5 things we've learned. I'm here to talk about Moises, Michael, ESSIEN, Caicedo. We'll be discussing the inverted role and whether we are seeing anyone excelling in this position. And I'm talking a host of other things today, my friends. So I hope you guys enjoy, show us some love, hit that like button, get involved in the conversation, and let's get straight into things. I have to protect Cole Palmer. One of the most controversial moments in yesterday's game came in the final seconds before extra time was over, where Lisandro Martinez cynically sticks out his left foot in a very unorthodox fashion, which catches Cole Palmer on the knee. And controversially, Martinez was not sent off. He only picked up a yellow card, and I'm completely dumbfounded as to how he wasn't sent off. You guys, I'm slowing down the replay so we can go through this step by step, but I can imagine that after Cole Palmer, who had a bit of like an average game in the standard, was regularly fooling United players with his nutmegs, his touches into space, his press resistance, I can guess why Martinez was out for revenge and he was ready to stop Cole Palmer by any single means. We're learning now the club is currently assessing Palmer. They're hoping that there is nothing significant with the limp that he sustained after contact from that injury, and hopefully he'll be fit enough to play against Arsenal. But I have to say, the treatment that Cole Palmer is getting this season is starting to bother me a little bit. I feel like teams now, expectedly, are going to have tactical plans to nullify Palmer, because a lot of the good things we do come from Cole Palmer. But sadly, there's a lot of dark arts when it comes to stopping and nullifying Cole Palmer's influence. And this season, he's regularly sustaining kicks to the ankles, kicks from behind, and worst of all, cynical challenges where there's not even really attempts to even try to genuinely win that ball back. And I think yesterday was the worst of the challenges and treatment that we've seen Cole Palmer sustain. And I feel like until referees now start to take their cards out and take control of these moments, you're going to continue to encourage the opposition now to have players dishing out this very severe treatment to Cole Palmer. I mean, you know, looking at this replay, slowing it down, Cole Palmer, brilliant flick over the top from Martinez, but for me, every action from Martinez is just unnatural. You could see that once Palmer flicked the ball over Martinez, he actually loses balance by looking to extend his leg. I mean, he extended his foot. He wasn't trying to make contact with the ball. How can it be the case when it's over the top of him? Instead, he looked to take down Cole Palmer. Now, was he purposefully targeting his knee? I probably don't think that's the case, but it's reckless endangerment. In his mind, he was going to stop Cole Palmer by any means necessary. For myself here, I think we're very lucky that when Palmer suffered that contact, thank God that his foot wasn't placed on the ground, because if that was the case, if his boot was firmly on that ground when he received that contact, God forbid what type of injury he sustains from that. But I'm getting a bit annoyed now. I'm hoping that Maresca now can maybe influence the referees. Managers can do that. Use your conferences and try to highlight the dangers that Palmer's now starting to face this season. So let's see if something happens, but I think the treatment Palmer's receiving now is starting to get a little bit too mad. And to move on to the second thing we learned, one thing that's even madder is the form of Moises Caicedo, because he was by far the best positive in last night's draw, and we are now seeing why we happily overpaid that big money to sign Moises Caicedo, because statistically, I think it's safe to say that currently he's the most informed midfield player in the entire Premier League. He's excelling where he left off last season, and as I said, with Conor Gallagher leaving and leaving that defensive role that was important for us last season, I was like, Caicedo now needs to emerge to be our new general, our new leader, and my lords, is he really stepping up even more? And right now, I really am starting to feel like I might be seeing the second coming of Michael ESSIEN. If you guys have been watching me for a long time, I've been making this comparison for a long time, but yesterday I thought this was the most Michael ESSIEN performance I've seen from a Chelsea player. I mean, Caicedo was the midfield yesterday. Defensively, 8 out of 16 ground duels, 1 aerial, 3 tackles, 1 interception. But on top of that is what he's doing on the ball. It's how he's finding his teammates. He's important in every single phase, from the build-up to facilitating the play by playing switch balls to find the wingers, by playing people between the lines of releasing runners. And on top of that, he's impactful in the final third, where he created 1 key pass, but most notably scored a world-class goal. He's been one of the standout players this season, and currently Caicedo most likely is the most important player in this system for Enzo Maresca. But my friends, let's try and eulogize the goal that Caicedo scored here, because this wasn't the type of goal you can even fool yourself into thinking that he profited from fortune-wise. There was no luck here. This was pure ability. This was pure technique, and I'm going to talk you through it. Number 1, look at the leg placement for Moises Caicedo. He firmly plants his foot on that ground. Caicedo has great orientation and use of his body. He is confident using his left leg as a pivot to balance himself as he looked to gain maximum traction, swiveling to make contact with that cross then. But look at the concentration on Caicedo's face. He was purposefully aiming for that corner, and he executed that action perfectly. Shout out to Cole Palmer for having the self-awareness to jump over that ball then. I think sometimes when you're playing ball and one of your teammates is just connected perfectly, you have that sixth sense and you understand, you know what, I ain't here to ruin nothing here. But this was a great goal, and it was the moment in which this goal came, because we were a goal down, we needed a reaction. And sometimes in this game, you can't rely upon your system to get you out of trouble. You need to rely upon the ability of the players. This is why we overspend for certain players, because they're the moments we are hoping we can get from them when times are going against us. And Caicedo has shown that he can influence the game in our favor. The exciting thing is, there is even more to come for Moises. I think that this guy can develop his shooting technique and striking technique even more to chip in like what Rodri does, with at least 5 to 10 goals a season. I think Maresca understands that. This is why he isn't quick to utilize him and overhype him just yet. I think he wants Caicedo's confidence to keep on growing, to keep on nurturing the player. I think that's the right approach. And during this time, he can work on the minor cracks in his game that he can improve upon. I think this is why it's important for Caicedo to have that partner in crime alongside him. You know, Lavia, defensively aware, able to break up the play. This gives Caicedo the freedom to not have to exclusively stay deep to break up the play. This gives him the freedom now to push further forwards and to be more advanced at times. And I think it's been the type of balance that Maresca now is looking to take advantage of. And I think on paper, it's probably the best use of the players. So my friends, absolute shout out to Moises Caicedo. I mean, it's been a very good year for him in 2024. And the way he's ending this year, my lords, I think even bigger things are going to come for this guy in 2025. Moving on to the third thing we've learned, my friends, I think it's safe to say no one has mastered this inverted role. Now, one thing I've noticed throughout this season is that Maresca has regularly been experimenting with the players he's using in that inverted role. We've seen Cucurella, we've seen Vega, we've seen Gusto invert on the left side, the right side, same thing for Reece James. No one has cemented themselves in the team just yet. Is that something for us to be concerned about, or is that part of the learning process? But before I continue with that discussion, let's understand the use of inverted fullbacks. Now, to be honest, I could probably dedicate an entire 10-minute plus video just on this matter. If you want to see that, let me know. But to give you guys a quick synopsis, here's the benefits that Maresca wants from using an inverted fullback. Number 1, inverted fullbacks help create the overloads that Maresca is regularly encouraging in the team. Maresca loves using inverted fullbacks to add extra bodies in midfield, which helps us control the game a bit more by pushing into central areas. We saw Gusto do that time and time again in the first half. By doing it, they make it rough for the opponents to press effectively, and this does give us that numerical advantage in midfield. We can understand that. Number 2, they're positionally fluid and flexible, and that's a big thing for us. Inverted fullbacks can seamlessly move from defense to attack by popping up in unexpected areas where you can't mark them. Imagine Reece James, who's starting in a deep position, then makes an underlapping run inside. I mean, who picks him up? Who marks him? You know, you're encouraging the third man run, and that helps create the overload for the team. And number 3, defensive stability in transitions, and I think that's one of the key things here. You can quickly have someone who's inverted drop back to cover counterattacks because their position isn't too far from their defensive lines. So this means that we have more balance when we lose the ball, and we can cut off attacks quickly and help protect our defense even more. They're the 3 main benefits very quickly. But just because there are key tactical benefits and advantages, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a foolproof perfect system just yet. And things we are witnessing are most of the inverted fullbacks are ending up in a lot more advanced positions than I guess ideally we like to see them in, right? Inverted fullbacks are finding themselves in those shooting positions in the half space, close to the striker, but they don't necessarily have the technical play to take advantage of actually being in those areas. And in a way, this limits us offensively because we lack that imagination or that quality or that presence. But Maresca's probably thinking, I don't want my guy to be scoring goals from 20 yards outside the box. You're playing in that advanced role because you're here to help draw out defenders. You're here to ghost into spaces in behind. You're in those positions to get the best out of the inside forwards who I want to see playing towards the goal. So there's a very fair argument that this implementation of the inverted fullback, they are purely supportive players to help get the best out of the more offensive players around them. But I guess ultimately there is a bit of a trade-off, and as the season goes on, it's going to be about finding that tactical balance. We're going to need that tactical balance against the right opposition. I don't think we can use this inverted thing against anyone and everyone as the season goes on. Even though we have strong tactical benefits and advantages, you just feel like if we're going to truly capitalize on these advanced spaces that these guys are finding themselves in, are we going to have to see the introduction of players more specialized for that role? And to think yesterday, Nkunku, Felix, who operate in those areas didn't come on. Hell, we have Chukwuemeka, who's literally born to play that role, not even finding himself in matchday squads. I think it does say quite a lot. I mean, as I've been talking, I've purposely been playing clips of Malo Gusto where, you know, it's really powerfully just summing up what I'm talking about, where number 1, we're seeing the benefits from the third man runs out wide, where he's ghosting in behind to free up space for Noni Madueke. We're seeing how he's entering spaces in midfield completely unmarked. But equally, behind every good action, we are seeing the trade-off, and that is the lack of quality at the end. That is the lack of end product. That's some overhitting passes or not having the ability to take advantage there. Now, he's not a bad player, but it is a very unfamiliar role for him. And it's like one of the first times he's actually playing this advanced midfield role. As the game went on, all of us called for Marc Cucurella to come on to take off Gusto, and to be honest, we didn't see any improvement at all. And the funny thing is, we actually don't necessarily have a specialized inverted option, because if Gusto is very good at receiving and carrying and being mobile, Cucurella can't do that. If Cucurella inverts as the fullback, his best parts come from breaking up the play, and they come from making supportive runs. Currently, we don't have that option that can combine the best of both these players. That's what we really need. So, is this something Maresca must change as the season goes on, or do we have to be patient and wait for the players to develop more in this role? Time will tell, but when you have specialized players in Nkunku, Felix, and Chukwuemeka begging for game time behind the scenes, it does feel like Maresca may be forced to make some interesting tweaks as the season goes on. The 4th thing we learned, my friends, Pedro Neto now, he is trying to own that left wing spot, because I'd have to say he was our 2nd best player against Manchester United, and ever since Sanchez has found himself at the team currently, we've now seen an assist against Panathinaikos from Neto, we've seen a superb assist against Newcastle, and we've seen 2 lively halves against Liverpool, and last night, both halves against Manchester United. He's becoming a real outlet for the team. It feels like his teammates are understanding Neto's game, Neto's rhythms, and Neto's timings. And you know, having someone that energetic, that lively, that impactful, is really adding something a bit unique for the team. And to have two strong wing threats where if Noni is not playing well like in yesterday's game, we can turn towards Neto, that helps the overall team. I thought Neto did well, 2 key chances, accurate with his passing, end-to-end in both boxes, and he was regularly looking to be our counter-attacking threat or transitional threat, regularly going on like 30 to 50 yard runs, taking us right up that field. And his endeavors, his mentality, he played a big part in helping us win the corner that created that equalizing moment for Caicedo. I think you're looking at that clip where he dispossesses Garnacho and he forces Casemiro to have to get a yellow card, and Casemiro is fuming at Garnacho for putting him in that position. That's what good players do, like Neto, and I think that currently he's kept his head down, he's believing himself, and he's looking now to really showcase his talents for the team, and I'm liking what I am seeing from Pedro Neto, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for the energy he played with against Manchester United. And for the final thing we've learned, can we do anything by having a 7 out of 10 goalkeeper in Robert Sanchez? Now, I know he was under stick by most of the fan base for giving away the penalty against Højlund. Let's go through that moment again. As you're seeing on screen, I'm just slowing things down. For me, I like to look at the preemptive areas that we should control to stop mistakes happening. I say this because this whole move comes from the fact that Casemiro is unmarked, no one's near him, he has time to receive, and he has like a second or two to like perfectly time his lofted pass over the top. I don't think that's good, and I think Maresca will be talking to these guys when it comes to re-reviewing this game with his analysis right. But the second mistake then comes from Wesley Fofana, who gets caught under the ball. In hindsight, Fofana timed his jump too early. He had to take quick steps backwards to try and just minimize the angle, and I think maybe he could have got there. And when the ball goes over the top, the third mistake then comes from Robert Sanchez. Now, Højlund takes a really bad touch away from goal. I don't think Sanchez expected that, hence why he's brought him down. And sadly for Sanchez, this now becomes the second penalty he's given away in his entire career at Chelsea. That's 2 this season, the first one coming against Bournemouth, where Evan Olsen didn't score from that. But ironically, he was forced into making a mistake again because Wesley Fofana, of course, made a mistake ahead of him. So I do think there's a bit of synergy there where you can't fully place the blame exclusively on Sanchez, even though you like to think the keeper has a bit more temperament. And I think in that situation, Sanchez, stay near the near post, keep your body big, and try and minimize the threat that way. But it seems like the club aren't necessarily panicking around Sanchez. Matt Law came out today to state the club still have faith and hope that Sanchez can become one of the leading keepers in the Premier League. He's only just turned 26 years old, and keepers, most notably guys like Martinez at Aston Villa, they don't actually peak until their late 20s, early 30s. I think it would be very cynical to act like Sanchez hasn't been good this season. He's made big moments for us. He made the save, of course, against Bournemouth, and he's been very important with how he controls his books from set-piece situations, and I think he's got one of the best aerial claims in the entire division, and he's showing real improvements in terms of kick-starting attacks from deep with his passing range. So there has been some good in his game. But the question is, clubs that are serious about winning and dominating, they've always had goalkeepers that are at that level. That's the difference between being a great goalkeeper and a world-class goalkeeper. You have less mistakes in your game, and so far Sanchez has shown that he can't consistently be at that type of level. Now we have backup around him. Jorgensen, Penders, who looks incredible at 18, Slonina, who's having a great season at Barnsley. The club still believe in Sanchez, but they also signed 3 other players, and they also still have Petrovic hovering around the scenes that are all vying for that #1 spot. I think it was a bad penalty he gave away, but I don't think it was necessarily like a disgraceful calamity that he is solely responsible for. But if Sanchez wants to get to that next level to be one of the leading goalkeepers, it's these types of fine margin moments he has to do better in, and he has to find more consistency in. So my friends, I think that is everything we learned in yesterday's draw against United. I hope you guys enjoy, share your thoughts and opinions, and get involved in this conversation too. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Lions TV. I'll see you all very soon. Cool.